Okay, I think we're live. Let me. We're live. Perfect. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the first session of Prep Days at Pivik. My name is Waqas, and before I do my intro, I want to just highlight these amazing efforts by the Pivik team globally and across the board. This is a great platform, and the fact that we had over 2,000 plus registrations and the amount of effort the team at Pivik is putting into is just phenomenal. So great job, guys. The reason I chose this specific topic of the list was based on the fact that first impression is essentially the first thing that you do or you make when you are applying for a job. And for me, as part of my team, that is a critical component of anyone we hire in the team. So before diving deep into the actual topic, as I mentioned, my name is Waqas. I'm the Director of Marketing and Design at Xcrit. I've been here for the past um, 6 years. Previously, I worked at Schlumberger and Plumblade. As part of my job role, I basically hire individuals, build a team, and impressions or how someone comes across from a cultural fit point of view is critical for me. So that's why this topic is extremely important, close to my heart. I'm an engineer and I've done my MBA from University of Derby. I'm an avid gamer. I enjoy running, reading, as well as hanging out with friends. So that's a brief intro about myself. Um, Before we actually dive into the actual topic, I want you to take a moment and start thinking about one key aspect, right? Which is you're sitting in a restaurant, at a bar, in your office, and three people just walk into that room, right? A tea house or whatever. And as an individual, that human mind works in a certain way. So as soon as we see people, three strangers who are not related to each other, just walk in the room, we immediately create some mental images or some mental aspects of their personality, which are in most cases not correct, right? But that's how our mind works. So I want you to think about this, and we're going to come to this at the far end of the session. We'll talk about this, but as soon as three people walk into a room that you're sitting and you look at those three strangers or three individuals, what are the key elements that would contribute towards you or you making or talking or approaching one of those individuals, right? So what are the areas that we characterize those people? So let's keep this there, and we'll come back to this at the far end of the session as to why you go for a certain aspect or a certain area. Now, whenever a company is hiring someone, there are at least at Xtrade or at most of the companies that I've worked for previously, there are two key components that we look for. One is skills, and then the second one is culture, right? So skills is what you have on your CV, right? And if you've been called for an interview, you've essentially passed over that step. So you've essentially cleared the first stage of qualifying as a skilled individual for that job. So plus one on that, great job, you're in. The second element, which happens in the very first interview, be it a recruiter screening, be it a first HR interview, be it initial meetup, at Extrude we call it an initial meetup, is tied to culture. No matter how good an individual is from a skills or portfolio perspective, they have to be a cultural fit to be part of any team at Extrude or any team at any great company, because you'll be able to learn skills quickly, you'll be able to learn skills on job, but cultural aspect on how you'll fit into that team or into the ecosystem or into the vision of the company is going to play a vitally important role in the short or the long run. And the reason I'm really going on about the culture aspect is this is where the whole aspect of creating a strong first impression comes in, right? What's your elevator pitch? How do you carry yourself? What do you do as soon as you walk in? Are you late? So the whole point of this component is skills wise, we have a lot of skillful engineers across the globe, across Pakistan. I'm sure there are 2,000 plus who applied here, engineering and across different domains. To make yourself stand out from the crowd, you need to be able to make an impression or make or leave a lasting impression on the interviewer, right? So diving deep into how you would make that all important strong for a first impression, I've categorized these into 6 key areas, right? So I'm going to dive deep into each element. The first one is self-belief. Right? So how much do you believe in yourself and what does that impact to you? So we'll come to that into a second. Knowing your audience. That play into the entire ecosystem of you making a strong impression. Listening. This is an important one, and we tend to ignore this quite a lot, not just in interviews, across the board. So that's an important element that is critical to make a strong first impression. Logistical commitment, and then finally being able to personalize a certain, being able to personalize your interview process or your discussion with the interviewer. So I'm going to take a pause for about 20 seconds. I want everyone to either write this down or think about it as to what these 6 styles or these 6 points mean. And I'm going to start explaining this after, but if you have any comments, feel free to add them. I'm just going to quickly view those if anything has come in. But let's give it 20 seconds. I'm going to take a pause and then we'll continue right after that. Okay. So we don't have any comments. Cool. So let's go. Let's carry forward. Quickly going through these. So let's start with the first element, which is self-belief, right? So if you Google the aspect of how to make a strong first impression, the first thing that will come up is be confident, right? Have the right body language, carry yourself properly, right? So it's important to understand that these 3 aspects come from self-belief. So self-belief is the fact that you are going to apply for a role or you have been selected to get interviewed for a role, and you have that self-belief in yourself that you are the right person for that role. That essentially is going to translate into you being confident. Your body language will be reflected based on the confidence that you already have. And when we combine these 2 aspects of confidence and body language, it's going to clearly, very clearly showcase um, how you carry yourself to the beginning of the interview to the far end of the interview, right? So self-belief is the ability to essentially have that faith in yourself that the role that you're applying for, you're going to bring in tremendous value into that role for the organization. So if you have that self-belief, confidence will flow itself. It's going to come automatically. So will body language. So will your demeanor. You can't just raise confidence. You can't just say that I'll be confident today. That's not how it works. So it has to be there. There has to be a proper process, and that comes from what I believe is self-belief. If you believe in something, if you believe in that role that you're applying for, confidence will follow, and so will your body language, which is going to reflect the confidence. The second important element to make a very strong first impression is knowing your audience, right? For any hiring process, generally there will be anywhere between 3 to 5 or 6 interviews, right? They'll start off with the screening process and they'll go all the way up to technical and HR interviews. Your ability to impress the right audience with the right information is key. In an initial meetup or the first interview after you've been shortlisted, it's critical that you know about the organization that you've applied for. You have an idea of some open questions that the interviewer may ask, and you have the ability to stay on point and keep it relevant. All right. So knowing your audience is extremely important. If you're going in for an HR interview and you have prepped for a very tech interview, which will probably come in the later stage of the process, then that impacts the audience. And remember, every stage of the interview is a screening process. So your first impression on every stage has to be adapted based on your audience or the people who you're talking to. The third one, which is my recent favorite, is the ability to reflect the right image. So you have to remember that there's this conversation about express yourself, the freedom to express yourself. Please don't confuse casual dressing with appropriate dressing, please, because they're two very different things. A casual dress in a certain interview might be appropriate, right? A casual dress in a different kind of interview might not be appropriate. Might not be appropriate. So if you're going for an interview for an investment banker, you're expected to wear a suit and a tie, right? If you're going for an interview to a startup in the valley, generally they are open to uh, more casual appearance. So please, in the effort to show or express yourself freely, you have to be careful on the appropriateness of that component. So dress casually if the company that you're applying for accepts that as a norm. And this branches out to the fact that if you're applying a job in Pakistan, to if you're applying to a job in Berlin, or if you're applying a job in New York. So this is critical of the cultural norms across the area. At Xgrid, we have a very casual dress code. I go in my jeans and t-shirt, but I would never go in my pajamas, right? So maybe if I was managing a hotel in Hawaii, I would probably be okay for me to go in flip-flops. So it's important to dress appropriately and not confuse that with casual dressing. Listening is another key aspect which is critical for the entire conversation of making a strong impression, because generally what I've seen or what happens is people tend to listen to people to respond. Don't listen to respond, instead listen to understand the question, take your time and then give an answer or then respond. You're not on a talk show. You won't get bonus points for responding to questions in a rapid fire way, right? So try to listen to the interviewer, understand the question, analyze it, and then answer. Do not interject. So don't, if the question is still, if the interviewer is still questioning, you may know the answer already, or you may know more than them, but just wait it out. Right? Another thing that is critical is how committed are you logistically. So logistically committed means that you're punctual, you're on time, you plan ahead, and you have the right tools. So anybody can have a flat tire on their way to the office or to the interview. Your internet could crash, but ideally, if you plan ahead, these things tend to happen. The statistical value of these things goes down, right? So plan ahead, be punctual, be on time, and if you cannot reach on time, if there's something wrong, over communicate with the HR. You have to over communicate to make sure that people essentially are aware that you are serious about this role. And if you had a flat tire or if your internet crashed, you are keeping everybody in the loop. Finally, you need to be able to personalize the overall experience. So an interviewer would probably go through hundreds of interviews over the course of a few months to a year. And they would have some set questions, and they are very used to hearing the same answers over and over again. The only time you'd be able to give a unique answer, a creative answer, is when you be yourself and relax. If you're reading off a mental script that you prepared using a quick Google search, that's going to be very visible, right? Um, so if you be yourself, you have the ability to be that creative, bring the creative component forward, and that would then allow you to show them or show the company or show the interviewer the value that you're creating for them if you join for a certain role. What has changed recently is we've drastically shifted from in-person interviews to off-site or remote interviews. So that has changed, right? In Pakistan, this has come in as something brand new. So in person was very common. We're now moving to remote, Zoom calls, Meet, and whatnot. So my comment here is please do not take remote interviews lightly, because essentially remote interviews are also as important as in-person interviews. Still prepare as you would for an in-person interview, dress up, at least dress up to the portion that will be visible on the camera, right? Um, and make sure that you're ready as you would be for an in-person interview. The core difference here is that you need to make sure that you have a good internet connection, things are working, you don't have echo in your room, you're not sitting in a cafe to do the interview, because all of these count towards the commitment. Um, and things will go wrong, laptops will crash, internet will go down, there will be power outages, and that's everybody understands that. But if something like that happens, it's your job as an interviewee that you communicate and over communicate, which I mentioned earlier. About 3 weeks ago, we had a remote candidate. The person joined in for a task review. They were the final stage of the hiring process, by the way. They disconnected a couple of times. And the second time they disconnected, they did not join back. So the hiring team was still on the bridge. They did not join back. Um, there was no communication from the person. Our HR reached out to them, but that leaves a very negative impression that essentially this person no longer cares for the job. And I can understand they might have real problems, but the important thing that I've mentioned previously is you have to over communicate. Right. So we're 17 minutes. So I'm just going to wrap this up and go towards the questions. Um, you have to stand out from the crowd by creating a strong first impression. That's what makes you different, right? A diploma in double E or a MBA in 4.0 GPA, that's just on a piece of paper. You have to build that foundation from the very beginning. When you walk into that room or go online in front of that camera, that impression of laying that foundation during the interview process, that you're going to bring that value for the company that nobody else can. You get that one chance of making the strong first impression. And to do that, the components that we discussed before, they're going to be extremely critical. Always prepare ahead, research, and believe in yourself. Sounds like a cliche, but believing in yourself, but it works. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Stay on the confidence side. You may know everything in the world about your field, but you need to tie that in with confidence and humbleness. Arrogance comes out and it's very visible in first impression. So you may be a master of your domain, but keep it to the point. Stay confident, but don't reach out to the arrogant side of the things. I am not a fan of remote interviews. I like to be on site in person. I like to present on site because I believe body language, eye contact that you can make on site is much more impactful than if you are off site. But remote is the new normal. Due to the pandemic, uh, most of the interviews will be remote. You've got this amazing career fair. This is entirely remote. So adapt to the new normal. Um, there are some benefits of this and there are some pitfalls. So think about those as to what challenges have come out of remote interviews or this new component of their on-site interviews are not something that they have that happen frequently. So think about that. And finally, be yourself, over communicate, make sure sending out 3 or 4 emails to HR telling them that you won't be able to make it is fine is much better than just completely blacking out, right? So before I close this session and we talk about uh, the first sentence that I posted online was 3 people walk into the tea room. Of the 6 points, of the 6 components that I've discussed, which ones do you think would have had an impact on your perception of those 3 individuals that would have walked in? That's the first question. The second question is, based on the stuff that I've just mentioned, what would be the one liner or one line intro that you would start off your interview with? You're interviewing for your dream job. You've got 10 to 15 seconds, elevator pitch. and you now have to essentially convince the interviewer about your relevance to that role. So what would that be? And last but not the least, what kind of challenges do you think that we face with having remote interviews? So what are the challenges, and how do we overcome those and make them our advantage to our advantage? So that's all from the deck. I'm going to go on to the comments now and see if there are any questions. I'm going to go back to the 6 points so you can have a look. Just bear with me. So let's go back. Here we go. So have a look at this, and then we can start thinking about it. So there's a question: if you are freelancing, should we count that as experience? Absolutely, 100%. If you are freelancing and you want to highlight that as an experience, that's extremely critical. So we hire a lot of fresh graduates, and those fresh graduates who have been working as freelancers during their careers or during their studies, they come across as someone who have the ability to go beyond the call of duty, and they have their experience of dealing with clients directly. So 100%, you should always highlight your experience as freelancers if you have any. So that's extremely critical. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so we have another question. How to boost self-confidence? You know, how you have a skill set that you are good at, but your lack of confidence holds you back. While at the interview or any such situation. Okay, I'm not going to comment on any such situation. I'm going to focus on the interview part. Um, there's only one way to do this. It's basically um, constantly practicing, starting small, practicing in front of your sincere friends who will give you honest feedback. Um, and then you know that old saying, stand in front of a mirror. It actually works. I stutter a lot, so I have a stutter in my tongue. So I have to be either speak very quickly or I start stuttering, right? So, and that was a key deteriorator for me before I started presenting publicly. And it was about 12 or 14 years ago. The whole point was I started just practicing something that I wanted to do. And when you have the self confidence that you are aware of the role that you're applying for and you are a really good fit, confidence will flow, and interviewers will also notice that, right? Your body language will tell you, even if you can't portray your point in an effective manner, you will still be able to look out for, as an interviewer, you're still able to find those subliminal elements in the mix that this person is knows what they're talking about. So it's all about the practice and making sure that you know how to introduce yourself and how to make that all important first impression for the foundation. That answers the question. Yeah, the interviewer tells you to be open. They are um, this is a double-edged sword, right? You have to be honest, but you are getting interviewed for a certain role. So as long as things are relevant for that, go ahead and do and open up. The interviewer is not your therapist, so don't go into details that they don't need to know. Um, it's important to focus and stay focused. So generally, the questions when they ask about being open is, how have you overcome a failure, or did you ever? How did you fail? Um, the important part is to put a positive spin into that. So how, if you failed, how did you overcome that, and what did you learn from that? How did you learn from those mistakes? So yeah, being open is fine as long as it's relevant to the role that you're applying for. Okay, it's the point to communicate. Sometimes the hiring process gets very prolonged and happens like the HR said that they will be scheduling an interview next week, but then they're called for a few days and you're kind of stuck. Do you think it's a nice idea to kind of touch base with the HR to ask the interview that was to be scheduled? Absolutely. This happens to us at Xgrade. Remember, guys, so when you open up a position or any company, we're a small company, so even we get hundreds of resumes in. We shortlist folks, we send them out an email about them being shortlisted, and then HR obviously sometimes things slip through the cracks. So it's absolutely fine to drop a line to the HR manager or call them up and check on the status of the application. If they've told you to wait 2 or 3 weeks, you should really wait that time. But once that is done, as an individual, it's your right to communicate and get an answer. The culture in Pakistan is not great in terms of reaching out or keeping candidates informed. It's changing, it's adapting, but as candidates, we have to change that. So absolutely, talk to HR, contact them through the official channel, not through their Facebook Messenger, guys. So let's be clear on that, and then let's make sure that we can do that. I'm a fresh and I'm actively applying for jobs. The problem is that you said we passed the skill part when we are shortlisted. But the problem I faced is interviews where the tests and questions were very basic and I had studied most of the things 2, 3 years back. So I do not remember them perfectly. So how exactly should I be preparing myself for the interview? So those, I'm not sure what role you're applying for, so I don't have exactly that context, but you need to be prepared for the interview. As a programmers, we have a lot of software engineers. We would always ask basic questions around logic, right? So binary trees and simple questions around data structures. So you need to have those bases strong. I would suggest revising for those components that you studied maybe in your first, second, or third semester, and then going in prepared for that interview. That's going to be extremely important because that normally is part of the first interview that happens. Hope that answers your question. If you are asked what is your weakness, this is the part where you have to be honest, right? So I've worked too hard is not a weakness. That's a lie, right? So if you say that, I've heard this hundreds of times. I can sometimes be overwhelmed when working in a large team. That's a weakness. So you can overcome that. I have difficulty delegating. That's a weakness. So be honest here, right? I have difficulty using new tools. That's a weakness. But these are all overcomable, right? But don't make up weaknesses off the internet, right? I really work hard under pressure. That's not a weakness. That's a quality, right? So boilerplate answers don't work. Personal answers work in this case. Is it okay to smile throughout the confidence and to the interview to show confidence and self-belief even if the interview? No, it's not okay to smile throughout the interview because then you will come across as a crazy person. So you need to be careful, right? So it's good to smile to begin with, to start off with, but if the interviewer is asking you a very serious question and you're smiling, if I start smiling throughout the presentation, it would be a bit odd, right? That means you're not taking it seriously. So facial expressions are important. Eye contact is important. So it's extremely critical to make sure that you have that, excuse me, right facial expression for the right question. Excuse me, guys. I have a really bad cough. It's not corona. I got tested, but still there. Um, so yeah, we're almost on time. I'm gonna wrap this up. This is the last question. So I can elevator page. Yeah, this is pretty good. Mubashirullah Durrani. This is pretty good. Maybe highlight how you have done the process component over the past few years, and how did that time with your FIP? But yeah, that's a good elevator pitch. Well done. I think we're on 29 minutes, so we're going to wrap up. I'm going to stop sharing, and this will be available online. So uh, that's it. Am I just handing off? Just closing this? Let me just have a check. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I have some mock interview slots for tomorrow. You can select those and tie those in. And if you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye, everyone.